Hi. So welcome to this problem number 354, Russian doll envelopes. So generally the problem names on lead code are really informative. Like you get to know what the problem is based upon the names. But this is a rather mysterious name. So let's dive into dive deep into this problem and see what this problem asks us to do. So the question says that you have a number of envelopes with widths and heights given as pairs of integers w comma h, right? So you have a lot of envelopes and each envelope is parameterized by this w comma h. One envelope can fit into another if and only if both the width and the height of one envelope is greater than the width and the height of the other envelope, right? So you just so there are these envelopes, they kind of look like this. Now you want to fit another envelope in this envelope. If both the height and the width of the envelope is the same, it can fit inside of this, and then you would want to have another envelope which fits inside of this envelope, and so on and so forth. So that's the thing. So what's the question is that what is the maximum number of envelopes you can Russian doll? So this entire thing of putting one envelope into another, it's called like Russian doll, right? So so first thing you need to realize is that one envelope can fit into another if and only if both the width and the height of the envelope is greater than the width and the height of the other envelope, right? So it's not just one variable, it's like the both of the variables should be greater in the bigger envelope and smaller in the smaller one, right? So the question is, what is the maximum number of envelopes you can Russian doll, right? Question is like rotation is not allowed, so you cannot swap the width with height. If the rotation was allowed, then this would have become a little bit on a trickier side. But let's look at this problem. So the input is 5 4 6 4 6 7 2 3. The minimum number of envelopes you can Russian doll is 3. So this says like it's like you can put the 2 3 which goes into the 5 4. You see 2 is smaller than 5 and 3 is also smaller than 4, right? Also 5 4 can go into 6 7 because 5 is smaller than 6 and 4 is smaller than 7, right? The 7, the first element here. So the question we have to like for a general array, what would be the sorry for a general array, let's say for a general array, what is the best way of doing this and what is the best way of attempting this question there? So this problem actually reminds us of a very interesting problem, which is standard problem in dynamic programming. It comes not in the basic DP series, but it comes as an intermediate dynamic programming problem, which is the largest increasing subsequence. I mean, don't mind my spellings, but the largest increasing subsequence is like you are given a sequence. Let's say, let me zoom in a bit. Let's not do that. So I'm given a subsequence like 1 7 4 9 3 5 0, right? So from this subsequence, what you want to do is you want to figure out which is the largest subsequence of this. So here like 1 4 5 seems to be like 1 4 5 seems to be like each element comes after the other and it is like greater than the previous one. So 1 4 and 5, 7 and 9 is one possibility. 1 3 and 5 is also another possibility, right? 1 3 and 5 is another possibility. 1 4 and 5 is a possibility. uh 4 and 9 is smaller. 7 and 9 is smaller, I think. So there are no other possibilities. The only possibility in this, like maximum you can have a length of 3. The largest like subsequence in this this largest increasing subsequence here is 3, right? So both of them are the length 3, so this is the largest you can have. So you can have more than one subsequence of length 3, but the length is actually 3, right? So this is just exactly this problem, but it is in 2 dimensions, right? So in a 1D case, we have this largest increasing subsequence, or the longest, if you like, whatever the way you want to say, it's the longest increasing subsequence, the largest increasing subsequence. So it's like you have to do the same things. You have to find out the numbers like 5 4 and 1. So 1 goes into 4, 4 goes into 5. Exactly, that is what we need to do, but you need to do that in 2 dimensions, right? And if you basically know, then there is an algorithm to do this. It's not that difficult to see. There is an algorithm to do this, the one dimensional case, in actually O of n square time, right? It's a very simple dynamic programming question. The premise is that you just like have a DP array, and that DP array actually maintains what is the longest increasing subsequence until that point, and it increases like like whenever you iterate over that array, you go back and see whether like that element is worth adding in the longest increasing subsequence or not, and so on and so forth. And that's how you could do that. So it's an dynamic programming of n square approach, right? Dynamic programming uh, of n square approach. The other approach, if you know a little bit on this problem actually has a far more efficient solution, a solution which is of n log n. So that is the solution which we're gonna implement. So this is a little bit not like quite like, it's also dynamic programming, but it's like smarter dynamic programming, right? And so I mean it's typical that you could solve any problem of this longest increasing subsequence with O of n square time, but the same could be said that you can solve this problem in n log n times. Not a lot of like problems which include finding subsequences or contiguous subsequences actually have this property. A lot of them are fundamentally O of n square algorithms, right? But this is a very special algorithm. It actually can be solved in n log n time. So this is the approach which we can take. So we know how to solve this problem. It's just to solve this problem in n log n time, right? That is not that hard. We know how to solve this problem in n log n time. The question which I would want to ask is, if I'm able to convert, what is the goal? There can be two things. If I am able to convert the 2D case into 1D in less than n log n or equal to, then we can solve it with with the conversion. So first we would want to convert, and then we would want to use the of n log n algorithm. So the conversion part is at most like n log n. If we are able to convert that in n log n, then the overall complexity of this would be 2n log n or n log n, right? So this is one possibility. Second possibility would be, we understand the structure of this problem and uniquely come up with an algorithm, right? Now both of these things can be done. Like when you are actually given a lot of these problems, it sometimes is that you can have a unique algorithm to it which is much better than something which you previously solved, right? So this is something which can be done. But one of the most standard ways of solving problems which are like, if you know a solution of a problem in a smaller dimension, the first thing we want to do is we want to decrement the dimension of the problem. So this is a very, very standard thing which is seen in statistics, in computer science. Even if you go to fields like machine learning, you go to data science, this is a very standard trick which we employ. Even in theoretical computer science, we do use these things. So the first thing is, how do I convert this two-dimensional problem into a one-dimensional problem? If this was a three-dimensional problem, we had three-dimensional envelopes and we wanted to put it in that, so we need to somehow convert those three dimensions into just one dimension, because we have an efficient algorithms in one dimensions. And a lot of things in mathematics and a lot of things in nature actually have really efficient algorithms in one dimension, but they don't have higher dimension analogs to those efficient algorithms. There's curse of dimensionality, and there is a lot of problems. Like as the dimensionality increases, the complexity also increases. So this is like very generic things to keep in mind. But this problem teaches us so many things. So if you look at this problem, it's actually pretty easy to convert it. It's pretty easy to convert this problem into a 1D case. How are we going to convert this problem into a 1D case? So what we do is, we sort the numbers, like the elements, by their widths, right? Now if we sort the elements by their widths, what will happen is the so we know that the one dimension of this is always increasing, so this will actually guaranteed fit in the second one, this would actually guaranteed fit into this one, this would fit into this one. So the first dimension is something which we don't need to check. The problem then remains about the second dimension. So if we are sure that the second dimension is is actually matches, and the first dimension automatically matches because it is sorted, right? So we just need to take care of the second dimension, and then we are done with the we are done with the solutions. So if we just have if you sort it by the first dimension, which is like the width, and then you have the first dimension is now properly done, no matter whatever you choose from the right side, it will actually satisfy the property. And then if you could find out the longest increasing subsequence in the rightmost of the right dimension, then we have actually solved this problem. So now with that said, what we want to do is we want to also understand that there is one corner case. What if the widths, like the first element, are the same? So in this case, like 6 and 7 are actually the same, right? Then we'll have to sort them in such a way that whatever elements comes to the right of this, we can guarantee that this can go into this, right? But if we let's just sort, so let's sort this 5 4. So first would be 2 3, right? Second would be like actually 5 4. We're sorting them by the width, right? We're sorting by them by the first element, right? Then you have either 6 7 or 6 4, or the opposite, right? So you either have this or you have this, right? If these are the same, if there was another like element with a 7 or 8, they would always go behind this. That is not a problem. The problem is when we have ties of the width. So what this sorted order gives us the guarantee that if you look at the width, this width will always go in this width, this width will always go in this width, so on and so forth. But the problem is here that if you look at 6 and 7, the 5 would want to go it like the widths will actually match. But if you have an order like this thing will not go like, oh sorry, you will have to have 7 here. So this thing will not go here because this 4 is actually less than this 7. So the property that whatever you want to choose on the right, if it's the longest increasing subsequence, it'll actually get into that, will be false, because the 6 will they have to be the same. The 6 will not match up, and also the right part will not match up, like the. So what has to happen is that the 7 has to come first and the 4 has to come second if the first part is the same. This is a very key observation, that this thing will now fit into this thing, right? Or like subsequently on the right side. So this thing will not fit in this thing because the 6 and the 6 are the same, but this thing, for the widths to like when the widths are same, the heights have to be tied, and we have to arrange the heights in such a way that the left side will fit like into the right side. So this is a very very important consideration, that this is correct and this is incorrect, right? So we sort the elements in ascending order for the widths, and if the widths are the same, then we'll want to sort them in descending order, the resultant elements in descending order, right? So how do we do that? So to do these things, we'll have to write our custom sorting function, because the sorting function which comes pre-built with the standard template library actually does not have this functionality, that's this gimmicky functionality. So let's like have a feel of how to do that, right? So first thing, we have this variable called size, which is envelopes dot size, and standard, if size is equal to 0, or like if say the size is smaller than equal to 0, then I return 0, because if you don't have anything, nothing can happen. So this is very quickly the corner case taken care of. Now let's also, now we need to, first thing we need to do is we need to sort the. So now once we do this, so this is incorrect. Now so what after this? So this is the first step. The second step would be the width are all automatically sorted. Now we just need to find out the longest increasing subsequence of this thing, 7 and 4, and we know that the longest increasing subsequence is 3 4 and 7, right? So the maximum number of envelopes you have is 3, right? So, and the three one would be this one, this one, and this one. So which is the answer to the question? So 2 3 5 4 and 6 7. So 2 3 5 4 and 6 7. So it's like you shrunk the problem into from this two dimension to just one dimension L, longest increasing subsequence, whose algorithm we actually have right with us. So let's do that. So first thing we need to do is we need to handle the sorting part. So how do we sort the first element in this interesting manner? So for that we'll need to write our own sorting function. So we just say sort. We'll need to sort from the envelope dot begin and envelope. Some of the spelling is really a problem. Dot end. Right now this is not enough because you need to it doesn't know how to compare, so you will need to write our own comparator function. Now how do you write your own comparator function? So there is a lot of ways of doing that in C++. So this is C++ 14. So the way we write our own comparator function would be we have these something called these lambda expressions, and these lambda expressions are written as follows. So we have open and close square brackets, then we write what data types does it accept. So it accepts a vector of int, let's say a, and it's a vector of int b, right? Now we also have to write this function, like what does this function. So this is nothing but the swap function. If this function is true, then they'll actually swap between will swap b and a, right? So the function has to return true if you want this b and a to be swapped, and if it is false, then it will not swap them, right? So the first condition is that if the first element, so what is like why is this vector of vector? Because the array is a vector of vector. The elements of those arrays would be vectors themselves, right? So now we first need to sort by the width in ascending order. So the width would be a of 0 would be the width in this element, and b of 0 would be the width in this element. Now if we can say that if this is the case, if a of 0 is greater, like b of 0 is greater than, if this is true, then we need to then we return true, right? So this is one condition, right? Or let's put these all, or you have somehow you have this thing is equal to b. So what if the widths are same? So this is or if the widths are same, you have this, and you would want to return the opposite, them in descending order. So you need to sort them by descending order, right? So this is the way you sort them, right? Yes. So this is true, and there is this semicolon here, and then there's this semicolon here as well, right? So because this is the entire sort function. So just remember that this lambda expression which gives this template of this comparator to the sort function, and if this template comparator function is true, then the a and b, the elements in question, would be sorted. If it is false, it would be not sorted, right? So we have done this. Now what we want to do, we want to just take the, let's say we have this vector, let's say vector of int, which let's call it h of envelope, so height of envelope. So this is the vector of height of envelope, and so we do is for int I is equal to 0, or let's have very simply auto, which is my favorite keyword. Let's have some real estate first of all. Okay, auto of what auto of, so we have auto, let's have element in this array of envelopes. In element, if we have this array of envelopes, element, for every element we need h dot env dot push back element of 1. So we have this thing sorted, and now we just want to push back the element of the last element of this, and this array will then be sorted. So we'll just return the length of largest increasing subsequence of hnf, right? We'll write this function length of lis, and whatever the answer to that function would be, we'll just return that answer, and that is actually the answer to the question we want, right? and the complexity of this thing, the sorting is like the complexity of this convert part, the conversion part of converting this 2D problem to 1D problem is this sort operation, and this sort operation is actually n log n, right? Because this will be merge sort, or this would be any sort in the backend, which you could sort this in n log n, because the comparator operator is also of 1, so the sorting is n log n. So this is, we managed to convert this from 2D case to 1D case in n log n, and then we you know, we uniquely came up with an we did not uniquely come up with an algorithm, but we converted this into the 1D problem in n log n, and then we can solve this 1D problem in n log n, so the total complexity would be n log n. So this a length of LIS function, if I am able to write this function in n log n, then we are done, right? So let's actually write this function. So the length of LIS. So the length of LIS is this function which is which takes in a vector of int, you know, pointer to a vector of int, and let's call it let's say array, and it returns the longest increasing subsequence, right? Now if you know the logic of this thing, it's actually a pretty straightforward algorithm, but I'll very quickly go through the logic of this thing with you. So it's pretty you know, straightforward to see the logic of this. So let's say you have you know, I have a few examples in front of me. So let's say you have these elements. Let's write them down. Rather than this tool, let's manually do that here, or we, on second thought, this is actually much better, much faster. So we have some elements, I have them written. So 10, 5, 8, 3, 9, 4, 12, 11, right? So let's have some more space between them. We have a lot of space. So these are the elements we want to find out the largest increasing subsequence, right? Okay, in n log n time. Now while we do that, we also need to we also need to have, so for this we need to have an array. Let me grab up the pen tool. We also need to have an array, and this array, the DP array, this is a very standard problem which I have, the DP array, right? The DP array, and this DP array is actually an interesting array. It stores the following. It stores, we will see what it stores. So what we need to do in this algorithm is we need to start from every element, and we need to go to every element, and we need to find out what is the largest length of the subsequence you can have from that element itself, and we have to maintain that thing. So with an element of 10, the largest increasing subsequence we have is of 10 itself. So in this DP array, a subsequence of length 1, it like the subsequence of length 1 and ends with a 10. It ends with a 10. Now if you have two elements 10 and 5, now the element of like 10 5, you cannot make a subsequence of 10 and 5, right? But you could act greedily, and what you could do is you could, instead of maintaining this 10 as the starting position of the subsequence, you could maintain 5 as the starting position of the first sequence, because 10 is actually larger than 5. So potentially if there is any subsequence to be found, you have more chances to find that with 5 than you have the chances to 10. Whatever subsequence will follow 10 will follow 5, but 5 has some, we could have more subsequences starting with 5 than we from 10. So what we do is we have the subsequence of length 1, we update it with 5. So in the subsequence of length 1, it ends with a 5, right? So 5. Then we have 8. Now 5 and 8 can have, you know, a subsequence, the increasing subsequence. So we have 5, and then we have 5 and 8. We cannot discard this subsequence 5, because we might find out in the future there could be a subsequence which is better than the subsequence that starts with 5 and 8. So we keep this 5, but we have this DP array which says that now with the element 2, the size of 2, the last element is 8, right? Now 8. Now we have 3. Now 5, 8 and 3. Now we cannot do that, but there is no increasing subsequence, but we realize that instead of maintaining this 5 as a one digit subsequence, 3 is actually a better choice, because with 3 you could form even more subsequence in the future. So this remains 5 and 8, but this is now updated to 3. So this goes down to 3, right? So the subsequence with length 1 is actually 3, with 2 is 8. So 3 is 3, 5, 8. Now we have 9, right? Now with 9, you could append 9 with 3, 9, but that is just a subsequence of 2, right? But if you append it here with 8, it is a subsequence of 3. So you'd want to append it with the maximum, previous subsequence. So this is 3. Now we cannot discard just 5 and 8, because we could have a better subsequence with just 5 and 8 maybe in the future. So 3, 5, 8, and now you have another one, which is 5, 8 and 9, right? And we have this DP of array subsequence length starting with 3 and it ends with this number 9. Now you have this element 4. With this element 4, you cannot append it. You could have like 3, 4, but like this is just a subsequence of length 2. We have that, so you actually cannot append it anywhere, in this here. This cannot go here, this cannot go here, you cannot even increment this first one. So we don't care about the 4, and we just move it. It will not be the part of the subsequence, like for us. So 3, now 12. Now you could have a 3, 12, that's valid. You could have 5, 8 and 12, that's valid. But you could have a 5, 8, 9 and 12. This would be a far bigger sequence. So you maintain this 3, you maintain this 5, 8 for a in the future. You maintain the 5, 8 and 9, and you say that you also adding 12 to the mix. 5, 8, 9 and 12 here, right? Also with the we have a subsequence of length 4 and we have 12, right? This is 12 because it ends with 12. And now in this case, all of this is actually the same. We could have a 3, 11, we could have a 5, 8, 11, we could have a 5, 8 and 9, but we can have a 5, 8, 9 and 11, because this 11 is a better choice than 12, because 11 can potentially have a bigger sequence through the right. So now this thing will become, all of this will be copied, and what will remain would be 5, 8, 9 and 11, and this thing would be updated to 11, right? So finally what we remain is the longest sequence after the last element. This is actually our largest increasing subsequence, right? The largest increasing subsequence. And this is how you actually even compute the largest increasing subsequence. But we actually don't care about the largest increasing subsequence, we just care about the number, the length of it. So the length of it is nothing but the size of the DP array, right? Is the size of the DP array. So it's a so how do you do this in n log n time is the question, right? So when you want to do this in n log n time, you basically realize that the DP array is always sorted, irrespective of what you do, irrespective of whatever it stages where, this array is always sorted. So what you do is you start from 10, you start from 5, 8. The question you ask, so suppose you have done 5, you've done 8. The question you ask from now on would be, the question you ask here from here to here would be, where should I include the element 12 in this entire array, right? Where should I insert this element 12 inside of this array? So the right position to insert would be at position 4, because like there was no position after this position 9. So the 12 would be inserted here. So let's actually do this problem once again, but looking at this logic and not maintaining these arrays, right? So it will be very, very clear. Uh-oh. Yes. Now we are just doing this very tactically here. So this is how you actually, that's how you actually keep the, understand what is the array. So this is the DP array we care about. So 10, where would 10 go? 10, you compulsorily want to make a subsequence of length 1, so this is where 10 goes. Now when you ask this question 5, just a minute, let me handle this. Yeah. So what happens would be, so now 10, so now the next element we are is at 5. So 5, we ask this question, where would want this 5 be inserted in this sorted array, this sorted DP array? The right answer would be inserted here. So you replace what was there and you just insert 5. Where should this 8 be inserted? The answer to the question would be it is inserted after 8, right? So you make another element and you push it after 8. Where is this 3 inserted? The 3 should be inserted in the beginning, so you remove 5 and you insert 3. So there's 3 and 8. Where should this 9 be inserted? This 9 should be inserted after the 8. So you make another element and you insert 9 here, right? Where should this 4 be inserted in this array? This 4 should be inserted, this 4 should be inserted ideally here. So you could swap out this 8 and have 4 here. That is not a problem. Yeah. So that you could have potentially a better array with 3, 4 and 9. The 4 is done. Where should we put a 12? Now in this 3, 4, 9, I'm very sorry if this is like cluttered. This is 3, 4 and 9. 3, 4 and 9, the 12 will actually go here. So you make another, like, push the element at the end of it, 12, right? Where would this 11 go? The 11, we search the 11 also go here. So we replace the 12 by 11. So at the end of it, we are very fast. We got this element of like these 4 elements, and we just return the size of the DP, which is 4, and we know that the length of the largest subsequence is actually 4, right? So getting it, the question of this entire increasing subsequence reduces it down to iterating through those elements, and for each element asking where would they be in a sorted array. And this question of asking where does one element, where is this one element in a sorted array, is actually binary search, and binary search is log n. And if you want to do it for all of those n elements, so this entire thing will be n for iterating over the elements, and log n for doing this binary search over this sorted DP array. So the complexity of this entire thing would be big O of n log n, right? So yeah, hopefully I'm clear here. And so let's quickly write this program down. That is how you do it. That's how you guarantee n log n. So this is int n, that will be like array dot size. We have a DP array, let's say that be like vector of int DP. Now we iterate through for I is equal to 0 to I greater than n. We just say I plus plus, and we have okay, we need to find out where we need to add this array. We can do binary search here, but as you know, C++ comes automatically with binary search. Where is the exact position when you have to insert this? That thing is done with this something called lower bound. It is actually a lower bound. This activate windows always annoys me because Windows already activated. There's a problem with the key. It's an issue, but like, let's come back. So what is this j? This integer, like the the j would be an iterator, which we'll put here, and that iterator, it will come from this function called lower bound. This lower bound is a function in C++ which is exactly designed to ask this question while doing a binary search in this sorted data structure. Where exactly will my element come? Where is the place for my element? Give me a place before that, like before my element. So if it's j, it will return j. If it is like j plus 1, so there's the element called upper bound which will return the after where it has to come, and this is like element before which it has to enter. So that is lower bound. So it's like let's say auto j. So this is an iterator. The function we need is the standard function called lower bound. Now this lower bound is pretty much simple. It takes in the array dot begin argument from the beginning of the array. DP dot begin, not array. The array is unsorted. DP dot begin to DP dot end looks at the DP array from the start to begin and tells me where do I want to put this array of I. Where is its place? Once we know where is its place, there's a semicolon here. Once we know where we want to place it, if it's actually at the end of it. So if let's say if j is equal to dp dot end. So if this is true, then we would want to push it back. So we cannot put it, and after we cannot create something. So this is actually a linked list, so we'll have to create the node if we want to enter it at the last. So what we would want to do is we'd want to say dp dot push back uh, j, right? No, we would want to dp dot push back num, sorry, array of I, right? So we'd push back this array of I, and then we'll continue. Else if it is somewhere in the middle, we don't mind wherever j says. So wherever j says, we just dereference wherever j says, we just place array of I there, right? If it's at the end of the list, we actually push back, and where like if it's not, if it's somewhere in the middle, wherever j is pointing, we just put where a is. So this is dereferencing, this is memory where j is pointing, and we just add the value, we just change the value to array of I. And when this is all done, the dp array will be filled, and we'll just do return dp dot size, right? And we're done. Let's check out whether there's silly mistakes or not. You cannot actually write a perfect, oh, this is a perfectly written code without any silly mistakes. And success. So of course the memory complexity is pretty bad. So like the complexity is not like pretty bad. So what actually we did a little bit stupid was, we actually created this array and we passed this array inside of this. We could just have written the logic, all of this logic with the second element, taking into consideration the vector b, and writing these comparator operators. But actually sometimes the readability of this thing and the explainability of this thing is much better than if you would have just let's say written them that way, that it like just continued writing it here. So calling this own function, this is more modular code, and this is how you can debug well. So I am very much pro this technique of writing code than actually using the more memory efficient code. Of course, when you have this constraint of being more memory efficient, it is okay that you do that, but typically generally more readable code is much more appreciated than like trying to capture memory to the last bit, right? So thank you so much. I'll see you in the next video.